This is GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers, that is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo GARIS. This is flyer number 174, entitled MGTOW/Masculist Power Against Fluffies, Fluffie Feminists and Gender Politicians. Description. This flyer describes the power MGTOWs/Masculists have to counter Fluffies, Fluffie Feminists and Gender Politicians to help liberate men. We have the power to wipe out Fluffies, to discredit Fluffie Feminists for their non-EMO, equal moral obligations, hypocrisy, and forcing the gender politicians to menfair, that's the verb, the gender laws, or we will wipe out whole populations by continuing our paternity strike. And the flyer itself, just a minute, I'll make it full screen. Yeah. What? Oh, bear with me. I fucked up somehow. I'm going to have to screen, so I'm going to have to ad-lib a little here while I'm doing this. The link to the text of the flyers is here. Good, at least it comes up. I'm in China, so everything's unreliable. So now I have to trace flyer 174. Still going. 161, 173, 174. Click on the link. Okay, here it comes. Okay. MGTOW/Masculist Power Against Fluffies, Fluffie Feminists and Gender Politicians. MGTOWs/Masculists have real power when it comes to combating Fluffies, Fluffie Feminists and the gender politicians. In this flyer, I will lay out the MGTOW/Masculist arguments to be used against these groups, trying to encourage men to use MGTOW/Masculist ideas/arguments to help liberate men. I'll start with Fluffies. Masculists see Fluffies as the enemy. Fluffies are traditional women who expect to be able to parasite off the money of a man, so sit on their fat bums, don't bother to get a FIP, financially independent person, education, choosing to be fluffy crappers, studying fluffy crap at high school and college, so that in their 30s, when their biological clock is ticking hard, they will wake up to the fact that their status of being fluffy crappers means that they cannot afford to buy their own apartment or house, so then look around for some manslave to pay for her to stay at home and raise her kids in it. MGTOWs/Masculists have the power to punish these fluffies by wiping them out, not by killing them, but simply by refusing to have anything to do with them, forcing them to rot on the shelf to extinction. MGTOWs/Masculists won't even sex fluffies as a form of punishment for them being immoral, parasitic, manslaving vermin. Nearly all men are FIPs, so have the power to deny fluffies from manslaving them. If men have had their MGTOW/Masculist consciousness raised, a fluffy can only be a fluffy if she can manage to get her financial claws into some manslavable male, but the supply of such men is drying up fast. In the US and Japan, 2/3, 70% of young men under 35 refuse to marry, refuse to have kids, and spend their money on themselves. They do this because they have seen the financial massacring of their fathers and older male friends at the hands of the fluffy feminist-dominated divorce courts, which force roughly 1 married man in 4 to be financially massacred. A divorcing father will lose his kids with 90% probability. He will lose his house to his fluffy ex-wife. He will pay child support and alimony to her so that she can remain a fluffy, parasiting on him after the divorce the way she did before the divorce. We MGTOW/Masculists have the power to wipe out Fluffies, the way the abolitionists wiped out Negro slavery in the 1800s. MGTOW/masculism is essentially a rebellion by men against working for women. Thanks to the pill, now that women can work, women must work. Anything else is exploitation of the labor of men. Manslavery is slavery. Slavery rouses passions. Slavery is a war issue. The masculists are at war against the fluffies. The primary political goal of the masculists is to wipe out fluffydom by wiping out the fluffies. In the UK, young British men care more about the level of fipdom of their potential girlfriends than their looks. This is a healthy development and to be encouraged in other countries. MGTOWs/masculists have the power to combat fluffy feminists by accusing them of being hypocrites. Most feminists are still fluffies in their attitudes and expectations towards men. Many feminists are fips, which is fine, but they know almost nothing about MGTOW/masculist ideas, so they need to be taught, which is what MGTOW/masculists are now doing by putting up lots of YouTube videos on these ideas. Fluffy feminists still see men in the traditional way, namely as cash machines. Most women have a deeply ingrained expectation that men exist on this earth to pay for women to have babies. So fluffy feminists want equal rights for women, but not equal obligations for women. This makes fluffy feminists non-EMOs, EMO, non-equal moral obligations. That is, they do not want men to be given equal rights with women in such things as menfair in the divorce courts or bringing in the paternity rejection right, so that a man wanting to reject a pregnancy has the right to do so. So if the mother continues with the pregnancy, she has full legal financial obligation for the costs of the child. MGTOWs/masculists have the power to dismiss feminist arguments as hypocritical. MGTOWs/masculists are now confronting fluffy feminists with venom and contempt for their hypocrisy. MGTOWs/masculists have the power to dismiss most feminist arguments as wishful thinking that does not make much scientific sense when put to empirical test. Most feminists' claims are fantasy, not based on reality, making feminists often, quote, Iscyanate theories. Iscyanate is in brackets. Iscyanate equals ignorant of science. Fairies equals living in a fairyland, believing what you want to believe without evidence, rather like religionists, close brackets. The gender politicians are the most hated group by the MGTOW/masculists because it is the gender politicians who created the divorce laws in the 1970s that caused one married man in 4 to be financially massacred, and who refused to bring in the para, which is the most blatant example of sexual discrimination against men that exists, given that women have the MARA, aka, also known as, abortion right. MGTOW/masculists have a nuclear weapon they can use against the gender politicians called the population annihilation argument, which is, quote, if you gender politicians don't menfair the gender laws, then we MGTOWs/masculists will wipe out whole populations by continuing to reject paternity, end quote. In time, as the population crashes, this argument will force the gender politicians to give men what they want. That is, a menfair society, a FIP society, an emo society, where young women are socialized and educated to be FIPs and emos. The above ideas are powerful and can influence young men to confront our gynocentric society and bring it down. We men have the power to do that. We can wipe out fluffies. We can neutralize the hypocrisy of the fluffy feminists, and we can force the gender politicians to menfair society and the gender laws, or we wipe out whole populations. That's our power. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name De Garis, Masculist, MGTOW, Flyers.